topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good morning, Florida. Welcome to another Ask the Expert show where we bring you the top experts in the field of financial, legal, health, and home improvement. We have got an incredible show for you today. You know, this is politics. It's all we hear about now. And first thing on everybody's mind is the economy. We have been so lucky and so blessed to find our expert. In fact, we feel like this is so important that he is on with us not once a month, but twice a month, and we've extended it to the whole state of Florida. Let me introduce you to our great expert, Ray Farrar with Provise Management Group. Good morning, Ray.
Good morning, Stephen. Happy Monday.
Same to you. It's like everybody just talks about the economy. It doesn't matter what kind of financial position they're in. It is so important, I guess, with the elections coming up and what's going on.
Well, Stephen, there's no question in my mind, it hasn't been for a long time, that in spite of all of the issues that we could have in the United States and matter around the world, at a presidential election time, history has pretty much shown that people are going to vote their pocketbooks first, their safety second, and then everything kind of falls off from there. Clearly, there are other major issues, both domestically and internationally, that we need to be concerned about. But going to the polls, and here in Florida is primary day tomorrow. And then we've got about 11 weeks. We got the Democratic convention coming up. We're going to hear a lot about the economy and taxes, et cetera. There's an interesting phenomena, and it's going to be kind of interesting to see how it plays out. And that is that if the August, September, and October stock market shows a positive return during those 3 months, that the incumbent in office wins, because people are feeling good. People are feeling good that my portfolio's up, so maybe all this inflation stuff is behind us, and maybe I don't need to worry as much anymore. But of course, this year we don't have a true incumbent coming in, with Harris now having replaced Biden. But every election going back to since the Second World War, where there was an incumbent and the market was up, they were reelected. Where the market was down during those 3 months, they were not reelected. So I would expect that regardless of what the policies are that come out of the DNC convention this week, Harris is liable to get a pretty good bump in the polls. And then things are going to settle down, and we're going to find out what really happens in those final 6 or 7 weeks leading into the election itself. But number one issue, virtually every time, is the pocketbook.
It's amazing. Maybe I just forget about it after doing the show for so long, but that's all people want to talk about. And, the information you provide for your show is so amazing, Ray, and you are so well respected. Before we go any further, tell people about Provise Management Group.
Sure. Stephen, Provise is celebrating its 38th year in business this month. It was 1986 when I founded Provise Management as a financial planning and investment management firm. And again, I want to emphasize that financial planning is what we do first and foremost, and the investment management is really a subset of the financial plan. Most financial advisors, all they're interested in is investing the money because that's where we make our money, and they don't really do financial planning with certified financial planner professionals. We have offices in Clearwater and in Tampa, but having said that, we have clients in over 30 states, and we're serving about 1,150 clients, managing just less than $2 billion on behalf of those clients. We always offer a 1-hour free consultation to our listeners, and we will do that in either our Tampa or Clearwater office or by Zoom if it's more convenient for someone to do it that way. So complimentary, get to know us a little bit better. And of course, if you want to do a little research first, go to our website, www.provise.com. That's PROVISE.com.
You know, we promote your show usually a week out. We got a lot of emails from people asking us to ask you this weekend about Kamala Harris coming out with her plan, her finance plan. And they wanted to know if you had a chance to hear it or read about it and what your thoughts were.
Yeah, certainly, I've read it. I didn't hear her give her speech last Friday at all. But I guess what I would say is it's very much like the plan that President Biden was advocating. There were a few subtle differences. She adopted the no tax on tips plan that President Trump came out with 2-3 weeks ahead of that. Kind of interesting that I guess the greatest form of flattery is imitation.
Yeah.
Her policy basically said that we're going to have to tax those that make more money more. Didn't talk at all about spending less in the process. And while the policy, I'm going to say, took it to the next level, it didn't get anywhere close to the details that are needed to really assess what the plan is. But I always have to laugh a little bit about those that make a lot of money are not paying their fair share. And if you'll forgive me for not being perfectly accurate, the top 1% in 2021, which is the most recent year that the IRS has provided statistics, the top 1% paid something in the neighborhood of 42% of all taxes, but they only had about 30% of all of the income that was created. When you take into account the top 10%, those numbers jump to paying 75% of all of the taxes. And that's just the top 10%, which is at about $160,000 a year. The bottom 50% paid 2.3% in taxes. So there's not a lot of tax money to get from that bottom 50% under any circumstances. You're going to have to tax. If you're going to tax, you're only going to be able to tax the higher people. But I would suggest that there's a lot of people between $50,000 and $160,000, the so-called middle class, who appear under the president's former plan, actually would have seen their taxes go up a little bit, not a lot, but go up a little bit. So let's wait and see if she, coming out of the convention, fleshes out more details. Clearly, when they debate, she'll have to provide more details. The truth of the matter is, Trump hasn't provided significant detail. He's gone 1 or 2 levels beyond where she is, but hasn't been totally explicit as to how he would do certain things. And keep in mind, even though these two candidates say this is what I'm going to do, without Congress they can't do anything. And if there is
that's true.
And if there's a split Congress, I'm not sure who's going to get what without a lot of compromise. And a lot of compromise means you won't fulfill all of your promises, regardless of whether it's Trump or Harris that ends up being elected. So, but basically, go back where I started. Essentially, her plan is the old Biden plan, which is to raise taxes on those who make a lot of money.
You know, it looks like the Feds has set itself up for the first rate cut at its meeting next month. With interest rates going down, Ray, what is likely to happen in both the stock and bond markets?
Well, Steve, first of all, this week, Jackson Hole is going to be a very busy place as the economic summit is being going to happen, as it does every year. And Chairman Powell will be speaking Friday morning at 10 a.m. And it's a lot of what will happen in September is going to be highlighted or at least hinted at in his speech. I would be very surprised if he wasn't giving a broad hint that the Federal Reserve is seriously considering rate cuts at its September meeting, a rate cut, I should say, at its September meeting, and probably leaving open whether it will be a 25% or a 50%, half of 1% rate cut. I think he'll say things like, we'll still have lots of data coming in the next 3 or 4 weeks. So let's see what that has to say before we determine how much. But I think it will be devastating to the markets, both stock and bonds, if as highly anticipated as the first rate cut in not just in the 2.5 years since they started raising rates, but a much longer period of time than that, the rate cut doesn't occur at the September meeting. And that will start a new trend going in the opposite direction. I would not be surprised to see a 25% cut, 25 basis point cut at this first meeting. 50 might say that they think that the economy is too weak, and I don't think they want to send that message. If he doesn't cut, if the Fed doesn't cut rates, then the stock market is going to go down, and interest rates are going to go back up. Both of which means bonds are worth less and stocks are worth less. So I think he's kind of boxed into at least reducing it by 25 basis points. What will that do? I think there is so much anticipation already for the interest rate cut that there might be a nice little bump that occurs on that one day, but then things will settle back down into roughly where they are, with perhaps a gentle movement moving forward between now and the end of the year, both in the bond market, because as interest rates come down, bond prices go up. And I think that we'll see that trend. So investors ought to be thinking about, if they are buying bonds today, that they're buying longer term bonds, not just investing at 5% in short term interest like money market funds. Try to lock in that roughly 4% 10-year yield that exists on treasury bills.
Let's go get your crystal ball ready and go to Marianne in Naples. The volatility of the stock market over the past 3 weeks has been epic. What can we anticipate, Ray, from now until Election Day and to the end of the year?
Listen, my cracked, foggy crystal ball says that it's going to continue to be a very volatile time. You know, it was just a few weeks ago that Chicken Little was calling that the sky was falling.
Yes.
And the market took a tremendous downturn during 1 week, and then on the following Monday was down over 600 points. People were saying that, the world is coming to an end, the sky is falling, the Fed's got to have an emergency meeting, raise interest rates or lower interest rates 0.5%, and everything was going to heck in a handbasket. And clearly, we had clients, Steve, that called our office on that day and said what he would
Yeah,
do.
I bet you did.
And the answer is to do nothing if you're invested, because the market is going to go up and the market is going to go down, and over time the market goes up more than it goes down, and so long-term investors should not be making a major push with their portfolio. So as a result of us being able to talk those clients off a ledge, and they stayed in the market, they've enjoyed a 7% rally over the last 2 weeks coming off of that. And we're only about 2.2% below the all-time high of the market, where we were almost 10% down and had a normalized correction in the market. Didn't quite get there. So again, the volatility is going to continue. There's no way that we can talk about what will happen outside of the United States with the issues that exist in the Ukraine or in the Middle East. Any escalation there is going to be a negative, and shock's going to occur. What I can say with some degree of confidence is that we are continuing to have I can't call it a robust economy, but we're having a growth economy occurring. We are still moving in a positive direction. The stock market might be a little bit ahead of itself today than where we might be comfortable given the earnings. But earnings are projected to be up anywhere from 11 to 13% next year, which will allow for the market to have some continued growth. So if you're invested, stay invested. If you're not invested, look to dollar cost average into the market. And that simply means every month, take a same amount of money and invest it into the market. And over time, you get to buy an average. So stay the course. I know it's boring, Steve, but that's the best advice I can give.
We just got a really great text from Leon in Orlando. Love your show. I never miss one. It is probably one of the best shows out there. Thank you. Ray, do you see a bump in any direction depending on who's elected president?
Leo, first of all, thank you very much for your kind words and the compliment. It's greatly appreciated. Steve and I put a lot of time and effort into producing and doing these shows, and glad that you feel good about it. Leo, this is going to come as a shock to you. At the end of the day, it doesn't make any difference to the economy whether it's a Democrat or a Republican that becomes elected. Depending upon how you want to look at the numbers, the stock market has actually done better under a Democratic rule than under a Republican rule in the White House over time. The Republicans say, well, that's because we fixed all the mistakes you made before we came in, and you got to enjoy the benefit of everything we did. And the Democrats, of course, say it the other way around. The fact of the matter is, the best scenario for us is, regardless of who's president, is that the Congress is controlled by the other party. And when there is a split of power that exists in Washington, D.C., that is when the best economic conditions, at least as measured by the stock market, actually occur. So we'll have to wait and see how all of it plays out. Right now, of course, we've had a split Congress these past few years, and that's a positive because that really forces people to compromise if they're going to get anything done, which unfortunately they haven't done very much of over the past couple of years. But the best scenario is Democrat or Republican in the White House, and the other the branch of government, the Congress, is controlled by the other party.
Interesting.
I know that's not what any Democrat wants to hear that, and no Republican wants to hear that, but facts actually bear out. In fact, we are in the process of writing a paper on it, and if you go to our website and sign up for our Provise Perspectives, it's a newsletter we send out twice a month to our clients, friends, and potential clients. It will be printed in there sometime during September. And all you have to do that is to simply give us a call. Numbers scrolling across the bottom right now, 727-441-7420, or go to our website, provise.com. Don't forget, we have a 1-hour complimentary consultation for anyone in our Clearwater or Tampa office, or by Zoom if you would prefer that, even if you're in the Tampa Bay area. So hope that people, Leo, like you, will make it a point to not just send something to Steve, but check on us and see if we can help you in some way.
We got a great question to end the show with, Margie in Bradenton. It is said that AI will replace lots of jobs. Which jobs are most at risk?
So, yes, technology over the years has always replaced jobs. You can go back to thinking about moving from a plow to an automated steam engine that created, or maybe I should say, stagecoaches to trains. Certainly, a lot of jobs were eliminated when the stagecoach went out and people started traveling by trains. Jobs were eliminated when planes came around. People left the railroads and started flying planes, and those are simple forms of technology. But every step along the way, technology has eliminated jobs. But the beauty of it is that the technology causes the economy to grow. And as a result, the net is more jobs are created, not those that are not more jobs being eliminated that are being created. Maybe people are going to have to change their skill sets to do that. But as much as AI can do, it's not going to help wire a house. It's not going to help lay bricks. It's not going to build a house. It's not going to do a lot of the things that need to be done by people. There are those that say, well, it could replace the financial planning business. Everybody can get all their advice from AI, and you don't need financial planners. And that may be true, Steve, at some point. I don't think so, because our experience is most people still want the tactile feel of someone else shaking their hand. They still want to hear a voice that gives them confidence, not just something that's generated by AI. So yes, well, they'll be properly used. It will create more jobs. Properly used, it'll make people more productive. More people being more productive raises standard of living. More people working causes consumers to spend more money, all of which ends up growing the economy. So we do not see artificial intelligence as an enemy. We see it as just another tool to be able to use by people to do their jobs better, more efficiently, and thereby cause growth to the economy, which is then good for all of us.
Ray, give everybody your phone number again and your website, how they can reach you.
Sure. We always offer a 1-hour free consultation. Simply call our offices at 727-441-7420. And you can set up a complimentary meeting at our Clearwater or Tampa offices, or by Zoom, and visit our website, provise.com. That's PROVISE.com. We're closing it now, celebrating our 38th birthday as a firm, and helping about 1,150 clients manage almost $2 billion. So give us a call. We'd love to hear from you.
Ray, thank you so much, and we'll see you. I guess we're on our Monday show for the holidays. We'll be doing a rerun, but we'll see you the week after that.
We'll see you on the 9th of September, and in the meantime, enjoy the official end, the unofficial end, I should say, of summer, the Labor Day weekend. Steve, see you later.
You're the best. Thanks, Ray.
Bye-bye.
And we're going to go to break. When we come back, we've got our personal injury show. We're going to be talking with Angela Zervos, Colta and Zervos, one of the greatest personal injury law firms. We'll be right back.
And we are back with the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV with your hosts, Steve-O, Sophia, and their expert guests.
And we are back. I love doing this show, I guess, because my girlfriend had an automobile accident, and I could not believe all she went through. And it seems like every day I see someone involved in an automobile accident, and there's so many people who don't know what to do. So they've been with us for several years now. We have one of the greatest personal injury firms that cover all of Florida. So we've extended the show. It was just Tampa at one time, and the show has become so popular we do the whole state now. Let's welcome Angela Zervos.
Hi, Steve. Good morning.
Good morning. It's so strange, just with one box. We're missing somebody.
Lauren was unavailable today, but I certainly didn't want to miss out on the show and for the viewers. So,
well, we love your show, and tell people about your firm first of all.
Sure, Steve. Well, Lauren and I formed Zervos and Calta in March of 2017. We are exclusively personal injury trial attorneys. Both Lauren and I, even though our firm was opened about 7 years ago, we've both been doing personal injury work since the 90s. So we have a whole lot of experience between the two of us. I think combined there's about 60 years of experience. So we're located in Tarpon Springs, Florida. That's our main office. We have another office in Spring Hill, Florida, which is in Hernando County. We have a satellite office in Clearwater, Florida, and St. Petersburg, Florida, but we are licensed to practice throughout the state. And I personally have handled cases outside of the Tampa Bay area, which would include Jacksonville, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Boca Raton. We can practice anywhere in the state. And especially these days with Zoom technology.
Yes.
Unfortunately, COVID was a scary thing, but it did bring some good changes about where a lot of the hearings that are set with the courts are now video conferenced, so we don't have to physically drive to the courthouse. Depositions are done by Zoom these days for the most part. The only time we really need to step into the courtroom is when we're ready to tee it up in the trial in front of a jury.
Well, we are, like I said, we are so blessed to have you, you and Lauren as our experts in personal injury. I always think about it, really shows my age, and we've talked about this before, that it used to be when yellow pages were so important, it used to be you'd hear people saying they would choose an attorney by whoever had the largest ad. And I noticed right before, a couple years before yellow pages weren't even important, that attorneys were buying 2 full-page ads. So it was whoever had the biggest ad. But you know what? That didn't mean they were the best firm just because they had the biggest ad. And, we hear a lot of ads on TV, Angela, and there's a lot of big firms out there, but bigger is not always better, is it?
No, it's definitely not. Sometimes it can be. It depends on the lawyer. People fall for that. It's a gimmick. It's an advertisement gimmick. People think that it must be a successful attorney because they have a big ad, or they're on TV all the time, or they have a ton of billboards. And that doesn't really necessarily mean that they're going to treat your case the way it should be treated. One of the downsides of going with a bigger firm is that you don't get to pick the attorney that you want to represent you.
Right.
And we've talked about this before, but people who call these larger firms, usually there's a call center that basically takes the intake information, and then a runner usually will contact you, not an attorney, get you to sign up, and then your file, which is your case, is a file number, which goes to an attorney on some random rotation. So you don't get to pick the attorney. You're picking the firm, but the thing that's most important is picking the attorney. You don't get to decide who's going to represent you. Is it somebody who just passed the bar and got sworn in a couple months before? Or are you going to have one of the more seasoned attorneys who's been practicing for decades? And are they going to represent you? And so you really don't have a say in that matter. And people fail to recognize that. And I think that's a big concern. And it usually manifests, weeks, sometimes months later, where the client is trying to find out who's their attorney. And it's been weeks or months. And they call and they're not able to get through to the attorney. They go through a secretary, then they get transferred to the assistant to the attorney. And if they don't like that, then they get transferred to the quote case manager, none of whom are attorneys. And then when they want to speak to the attorney, they've got to fight, and they still don't even know who it is and what their qualifications are and how many cases they've tried. So,
or how about intake, Angela? You go to the intake department.
Yeah, I mean, Lauren and I, we get calls from a lot of people who are frustrated. They thought by going with a really big firm that it was going to help them, and instead they end up very frustrated. They feel very much ignored, and they give us a call. So,
I got to tell you, I've read a lot of letters on Yelp, and it's amazing the amount of people who start off with these big firms with the big advertising budgets, but they were so let down about their process. But it was mostly because a lot of them, they never even met or spoke to the attorney handling their case. And that's just not like that with Zervis and Culta.
No, it's definitely not. I mean, Lauren and I, we are a boutique firm, meaning that we're on the smaller scale in terms of number of employees. But we are big in experience. We are big on communication. We are big when it comes to compassion, and all of these things make for highly successful practice with clients who leave and are extremely happy. We've got excellent reviews as a result of that.
Yes.
We have clients who follow us years later or refer family and friends. And so that's very telling, Steve. Very telling. We're very grateful. And I don't think we would change anything.
You've had nothing but positive on Yelp, and I go by that a lot. Let's talk about things we can't tell a jury about what we want them to know. And one of the things, what is a non-joinder statute?
Steve, let me, yeah, that's a really good question. I think people need to know what happens in a personal injury trial if you are chosen as a juror and you sit as a juror in a personal injury trial. There are things that you would think a jury would get to hear, but the law precludes them, doesn't let them know certain things. I think the most important, and I'll go through them one by one, but I think the most important thing is that if you are sitting in a personal injury trial and you have the plaintiff sitting at one side, one table, and you have the defendant, who is the driver, sitting at another table with his attorneys, the jury does not get to hear that the defense is being driven by his or her insurance company, meaning the at-fault driver has automobile insurance. Let's say it's with State Farm, Geico, Progressive, Nationwide, any of those companies that we hear and see all day long, right, on TV, the jury does not get to know that that person who's sitting as a defendant who injured the plaintiff has automobile insurance. We are not allowed to talk about that. We are not allowed to mention it. The jury is not allowed to know that that car insurance has hired the defense attorney and that the insurance company has paid for, fully funded the entire defense and is in control of the defense. What arguments to make, what the defenses should be, which experts they want to hire, which I will say to you are almost exclusively the same experts all the time. They're always the same defense experts all the time are used by insurance companies. And so the jury sits there and they see the plaintiff, and then they look over and they see the defendant. And sometimes you've got a jury that's kind of puzzled by that, and they ask the question, is there car insurance? And unfortunately, the judge is not allowed to tell them that there is. I'm not allowed to tell them that there is. The defense attorney certainly doesn't want the jury to know that there is.
Right.
And that's called the non-joinder statute. And the reason that the non-joinder statute was put into place was because our legislature felt that jurors would be unduly influenced. Their verdict would be unduly influenced if they knew there was insurance, because they know insurance companies have billions of dollars and that they might render a verdict in a large amount because most people don't like insurance companies and they know they've got deep pockets. And so that they would be influenced by that fact. I personally tend to think that jurors are a lot smarter than that. They're specifically chosen because they are neutral and they've indicated that they can be fair and assess just the evidence and the facts. And I think that even if they knew that there was car insurance, that their verdict would be just and fair. But the law provides that they're not allowed to hear it because they can't be, quote, trusted to set aside the fact that there's insurance on the other side. So that's one of the things a juror is not allowed to know. The second thing they're not allowed to know is who got the ticket? Was there a traffic ticket? Did the defendant get cited at the scene of the accident? They're not allowed to hear that because, according to the law, it's irrelevant. The jury should decide if the defendant was at fault. And so, again, sometimes we have jurors who write a question and send it to the judge, and then the judge asks us, the jury wants to know, did the defendant get a ticket? And once again, we are not allowed to tell them that. This is kind of going to blow your mind, Steve. Jury is not allowed to hear what the at-fault driver told the police at the scene of the accident. He could have admitted, nope, not allowed. It's protected under what's called the accident report privilege. So if an at-fault driver says, oh, I went to change the radio on my car, I looked down, and when I looked back up, I didn't see that the light was red, and I ran the red light. And I'm so sorry. And the police officer documents that in the crash report and gives the at-fault driver a ticket for either running a red light or careless driving or both. The jury is not allowed to hear that he admitted that to the police.
Unbelievable.
And so they can come into court and say something entirely different, such as, I had the green light, or, it wasn't my fault. The plaintiff was speeding. They can change their entire tune and their story about how the accident happened, and we are still not allowed to tell the jury, hey, this driver admitted that he was at fault to the police officer. So I assume your follow-up question is, well, why is that?
Unfair.
Why is that, right?
Yeah.
Well, the legislature, again, many, many years ago, thought that they wanted to encourage people who were involved in a crash to be open and honest about how the accident occurred, but they didn't want them to feel that that open and honest approach could be used against them later. And so the legislature said, look, in order to encourage people who are involved in an accident to tell us how the accident happened, so that we could maybe decide if we need to make changes to the roadways, to the traffic signals, to other safety conditions on the roads. We need people to be forthcoming when they talk about how an accident happened without fear that their statements will be used against them. So that is the accident report privilege, and jurors are never allowed to hear what anybody told the police. How about that?
Even if they admitted it was their fault?
Even if they admitted it was their fault. We've seen it, Steve. Lauren and I have seen it where the police, they'll tell the police, we'll get the crash report, and the at-fault driver tells the police that they looked away for a minute, or they looked at their phone, or they were looking at their navigation system, or they were distracted by their children, or they dropped something on the floor of the car and they bent down to pick it up, and they, by the time they look back to the road, someone's either stopped in front of them, they've run a stop sign, they've run a red light, and then we take their deposition and they have a completely different story. And our hands are tied. It's very sad.
That is. And most people don't even know that.
No, I'm going to tell you that I bet 90% to 95% of the people who sit on juries don't know that. They don't. One of the other things, Steve, this is a good one, is we're not allowed to tell the jury about the defendant's driving history. So the defendant could have a history of speeding, DUI, running red lights, continuously having their driver's license suspended and driving on a suspended license. 95% of the time we are not allowed to tell the jury, hey, this guy or this woman is just a bad driver, and they have a history of committing all these violations, traffic violations, and we can't talk about it. We can only talk about what happened in our particular accident.
Angela, I remember the days when the police officer, if you go to court, the police officer had to be there. And I don't think that's true anymore, is it?
Well, the police officer has to be there if you want to fight a traffic ticket. If they've issued you a citation and you request a hearing on that ticket because you want to dispute that you were speeding or you ran a red light or you got a ticket for careless driving, under those circumstances, if you go to traffic court, the police officer is subpoenaed. But in a civil case involving personal injury, most of the time the police officer doesn't testify because he's not allowed to talk about what people told him. He's not allowed to talk about who he gave a ticket to. He is allowed to talk about how the cars were positioned at the scene or what he saw when he arrived at the scene. But other than that, there's very little a police officer can testify to in a personal injury case.
What if a person was drinking and they did a test on them that showed positive? Are they allowed to bring that up at a trial?
We are not allowed to bring that up, Steve, unless we add a count for punitive damages, meaning we are now seeking damages in a punitive nature because the defendant driver was under the influence to the extent that his normal faculties were impaired. And so if somebody gets a DUI and a crash was involved and they end up pleading guilty or they plead no contest to the DUI and they are convicted of the DUI, then what a good attorney would do is file a lawsuit that includes a count for punitive damages so that we can specifically talk about the DUI in the trial. And then the jury gets to hear about how drunk they were, where they were drinking, what their blood alcohol was or their breath alcohol was. We get to talk about how if they failed sobriety tests, if they could stand at the scene, if they were walking, if they were slurring their words. We get to talk about all of that. And then we get to tell the jury that this person needs to be, quote, punished for endangering the lives of not only the plaintiff, but of all the people out there on the roads. And then the jury gets to decide, in addition to the typical damages, which would be the plaintiff's medical expenses, lost wages, pain, and suffering. After they decide that, then they get to decide if they want to impose these punitive damages based on the DUI. But if you don't file a count for punitive damages, Steve, the DUI does not come into evidence and the jury is not allowed to hear about it.
Unbelievable. I know most people do not know most of this at all, which is amazing. Angela, I want to end the show with, tell people, we've got 2 minutes left, tell people why it's important if they're involved. Let's just talk about auto accident. Now, if they're involved with an auto accident, why they should retain your firm.
Well, they should definitely retain an attorney. And like we touched on in the beginning, they should do their research on the attorney that they're going to have represent them. Make sure that they have years of experience. Make sure that they have the resources, the financial resources to fight the case. And make sure that their personalities are compatible. But in general, Steve, attorneys are very beneficial in personal injury cases because we are talking about going up against these monster insurance companies. And their goal, I will tell you, in almost my 30 years of doing this, is not to be generous and to help people who are injured. Their goal is to see how much they can pay and how much they can save. It's actually very interesting when we get into one day the negotiations and some of the things these insurance adjusters say. But in order to be made whole, and when we say made whole, sometimes people are never made whole. They're injured for their entire lives. They never really recover. But you've got to be able to fight an insurance company, and that's no small task. So you've got to have attorneys that have the experience to do that. And at Zervos and Calta, we do. We really do, Steve, and we really care about.
Yeah, those insurance companies are very good at what they do.
They're really good at what they do, and they've got a lot of money to do it. And so you've got to have an attorney that cares about you and cares about the outcome of your case and what your future is going to be like. And Lauren and I are very much those attorneys, and we're proud of that.
Tell people how they can reach you.
Well, they can catch us at our website at www.zervosinjurylaw.com. You can read about our verdicts and about Lauren and I and who we are. And you can also reach us by phone at area code 727-937-3171. Consultations are always free, no limit on the time, in person, Zoom, or by phone. And we'd love to just talk to you, even if you have a question about something and you don't necessarily hire us. We always love to help people.
I love you both. Anyway, and you'll be back with us in a couple of weeks. Let's hope that Lauren's doing better. I know she's at the dentist today. So we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Steve. I hope you have a great week. Have a wonderful week. Thank you.
Stay safe.
Take care.
That is Angela Zervos, Calta Zervos. They're incredible personal injury attorneys. That's it for us this week. We'll be back again with you next week with more Ask the Experts.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.